So we have another presentation. We're going to turn our attention now toward kindergarten attendance. Thank you all for presenting that information on registration. It was one of the fastest moving projects I have ever worked on, and maybe one of the most exciting, because before we even had a final draft of a research memo, there was 5 action steps that were already being taken to address the draft. So that was really awesome and an exciting project to work on. And we know once our students are registered, we need to get them into school and keep them in school every day on time, which is the goal of the district. So we're going to have Abby Thaker from Read by Fourth and Giselle Salit, who is a research assistant in the Office of Research and Evaluation, talk a bit about attendance ambassadors, a small pilot project we've worked on. I also want to mention Maurice West from the Office of Attendance and Truancy, who was our district partner outside of research and evaluation, our practitioner partner who worked with us in every step along the way. And so he couldn't be here with us today, but certainly we have representatives from that office who can answer questions if they come up. So I'll turn it over.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the School District of Philadelphia expectation is that every child is in school on time every day, and that every child attends at least 95% of the days they are enrolled in school, which, if they are enrolled for the entire school year, is the equivalent of missing no more than 9 days of school. So unfortunately, in the 2016-2017 school year, only 37% of kindergartners met this attendance goal. This is the lowest percentage of students attending 95% of the time in grades K through 8. Additionally, 56% of kindergartners missed 10 or more days, classifying them as chronically absent. Prior research conducted in the school district finds that there is a relationship between being chronically absent in kindergarten and continuing that pattern in later grades. Data from the 2015-2016 school year demonstrates that approximately 7 out of 10 students that are chronically absent in kindergarten are also chronically absent in first grade. Lastly, across the elementary grades in the 2016-2017 school year, kindergartners also had the highest rate of students attending 80% of the school year or less. This is the equivalent to approximately 1 out of 10 kindergartners who are enrolled for the entire school year, missing at least 36 days of school. So while other factors affect a student's ability to read, consistent attendance increases the likelihood a student will read at grade level. We recognize that there are systematic barriers that are related to both a student's ability to attend school daily and to read on grade level. However, the relationship between attendance and reading on grade level is clear. The fewer days of school a child misses in kindergarten, the more likely they are to read on grade level by the end of the year. So approximately 7 out of 10 kindergartners who missed 0 days of school were reading on grade level by the end of kindergarten, whereas only 3 out of 10 kindergartners were reading on grade level who had missed 30 days of school or more. So unfortunately, not reading on grade level by the end of kindergarten can have negative effects on student achievement moving forward. So 70% of the kindergartners who are reading at an intensive or strategic intervention level at the end of the 2015-2016 school year were also reading at the intensive or the strategic intervention reading level by the end of first grade. So the more students that are in school every day learning foundational skills in kindergarten, the fewer students will continue needing literacy intervention moving forward.
Good afternoon. So I'll start with a little bit of background about the Read by Fourth campaign and our relationship with the school district around this work around attendance. So for anyone who's not familiar with Read by Fourth, we are a citywide coalition of partners, and I recognize some of our partners in the room, but we are over 100 organizations that are all working toward the common goal of making sure that kids are reading on grade level before they transition from 3rd to 4th grade. So we are very closely aligned with the school district's work around Anchor Goal 2. Just very briefly, our 4 core strategies are up here. We want to make sure that kids enter school ready for kindergarten. We want to make sure that once they're in school, they're attending every day on time, so they're present for the quality instruction that's taking place. We want to make sure that teachers have the support and professional development and resources that they need in their classrooms. We want to make sure that we're leveraging out of school opportunities, and working with families kind of undergirds all of the work that we do. And so the work that we do around attendance includes many representatives of the school district, as well as some of our external partners. We work with DHS, we work with CUAs. Here within this, I work at the library, which manages the campaign, and then within the school district, we work with the Office of Attendance and Truancy, the Office of Research and Evaluation, and Family and Community Engagement, really making sure that we're looking at this issue of attendance from all of these multiple perspectives. And the relationship with ORE and that group really makes sure that all of the work that we do as a working group is informed by data from the school district, as well as research-based practices. And I also wanted to add that one of the reasons that attendance is one of the core strategies of the Read by Fourth campaign is not only of what we're seeing here in the School District of Philadelphia, but also national research. So the relationships that Giselle mentioned between attendance and grade level reading, and the issues around kindergarten attendance in particular, are not unique to Philadelphia, but are something that we're seeing nationally as well.
So in order to address the barriers to chronic absenteeism in the early grades, and specifically in kindergarten, the school district worked with the Read by Fourth campaign to pilot an attendance ambassador program. So this initiative, where community members work closely with families to identify and address barriers to attendance, which Abby will talk about more on the next slide, is built off these 5 research-based practices cited by Attendance Works. So this is also based off of a similar initiative, similar initiatives that have demonstrated promising results. For example, the initiative Verde Involving Parents in North Richmond, California, a program which had partners and parents making phone calls or home visits after every child was absent or tardy, and provided referrals and resources where needed.
So the concept of the Attendance Ambassadors Initiative was that we wanted to identify a trusted member of each school community that could work with parents from within that school around 2 key issues. We wanted to make sure that they were communicating with parents about the importance of attendance. It's not just something you should do, but it's actually so important to your child's ability to read on grade level and benefit from all of the instruction that's taking place in the classrooms. And then 2, when families are experiencing something that just makes it difficult to get to school every day on time, we wanted a resource that could have the relationship with parents where they would get to hear about what was going on, and then also get to help them problem solve and connect them with resources. So one example of that I really like was one of the attendance ambassadors found out that a parent's work schedule just did not allow her to bring her daughter to school on time because the commute and the time that she had to be into the office just did not work. So the attendance ambassador was able to hear through her relationship about what was going on, and then through her personal knowledge of the community was able to connect that parent with a care provider in the neighborhood where she could drop her daughter off early, I think around 7 or 7:30, and then have some assistance getting her daughter to school every day on time. Which is not something that sitting in our working group we would have been able to problem solve around, but that individual with that relationship was able to address that barrier. So big picture, of course, we wanted to improve attendance, but we also had two learning goals related to this. So one, we wanted to hear from the ambassadors what was working in their schools and glean strategies that the campaign could apply more broadly. And then secondly, we also wanted to learn more about the barriers that do make it difficult to get to school on time, so that, again, we could identify what resources may already exist, or what more resources might we want to create as a team.
So here is an overview of the data that we collected from the 2016-2017 school year, which is the pilot year for the Attendance Ambassador Program. So the goal of the research, as you can see from our research questions, was primarily focused on learning from implementation. So we wanted to better understand how the program was implemented at the school level, what barriers to attendance and successful attendance strategies were identified by ambassadors, and what they found to be challenging about their roles. In the pilot year, Read by Fourth worked with the attendance office to identify 6 schools that could use additional support with their K-3 attendance. We placed 8 ambassadors at those 6 schools, with 2 schools having 2 ambassadors due to higher enrollment. And initially, we allowed principals and support staff to identify caseloads of students that would be the focus of the ambassadors' work. The different implementation of this programmatic aspect ended up being different at each school. So during the year, we tracked aggregate K-3 attendance. However, because of the differing implementation by school, we could not draw any conclusions regarding the impact of the program on attendance. ORE participated in regular meetings between Read by Fourth and the attendance ambassadors to collect anecdotal evidence about our research questions, as well as use that information to inform our focus group protocol. 6 out of the 8 ambassadors were able to participate in our focus group. As I mentioned, throughout the first year of the program, representatives from the Office of Research and Evaluation and Read by Fourth met regularly with ambassadors to gather anecdotal evidence and use that to develop the protocol. It was aimed at collecting more details about program implementation, barriers to on-time regular attendance, and successful strategies at addressing barriers. The results from the focus group demonstrated that each ambassador implemented the program differently based on the direction of the principal and school staff members. For example, some did not maintain a caseload, but rather called home of the families whose students did not get to school on time or were not there that day. We also found commonalities in implementation. Nearly all ambassadors reported greeting parents at drop-off to establish a relationship and continuing communication with parents through letters and regular phone calls home. Focus group findings also indicated 3 primary barriers to regular on-time attendance. The district-wide half-days made it difficult for parents to arrange and manage early pickup. The lack of resources such as uniforms and coats could prohibit a child from attending school. And transportation issues, particularly for parents who are transporting students to multiple schools, made regular on-time attendance difficult, especially when the weather was bad. 2 strategies that ambassadors cited as being particularly successful were classroom attendance incentives and the importance of early intervention. Ambassadors specifically noted that it is important to emphasize and explain the importance of regular on-time attendance as early as possible, ideally in kindergarten before poor attendance habits form. Most of the challenges cited by ambassadors were related to program implementation and the differing requirements by school. Some people were asked to focus on all K-3, including tardies, rather than the initial caseload that was conceptualized for this program. We used our learnings from the 2016-2017 school year to modify our research question and data collection methods for this current school year. So based on the district attendance data, internal research on the relationship between kindergarten attendance and reading levels, and the feedback from the ambassadors regarding early intervention, we decided to focus the program on kindergarten. So in order to be more consistent in implementation and reduce the workloads of the ambassadors, we selected caseloads for each school that consisted of no more than like 20 or so kindergarten students with the lowest attendance in September and October. Previous research has found that low attendance in the initial months of school can be predictive of continuing attendance problems. So this year, at the end of the school year, we will look at the attendance of the students that were on these ambassadors' caseloads. We also used a semi-structured survey to ensure that we could gain feedback from all of our ambassadors. 7 out of 8 of the ambassadors this school year were able to complete our survey. Right. And these are our survey findings. So in the 17-18 school year, we opted to collect formal data using the semi-structured survey format. This year, the ambassadors stressed the importance of expanding parental knowledge about the importance of kindergarten attendance and the effect that poor attendance can have on student outcomes. Many ambassadors didn't feel that parents necessarily understood this importance, and that that kindergarten is important in general for building foundational skills and knowledge. Ambassadors also cited different barriers to attendance than they did in the previous school year. They also talked about some additional barriers being corner store visits. One ambassador tried to intervene by talking with the local store owner to try to get students to school on time. Neighborhood safety was also a concern for some parents and for schools in neighborhoods where incidences would occur in the surrounding blocks of the school. So similar to the 16-17 school year, ambassadors cited that frequent communication with parents and using incentives were effective strategies to increase attendance. 7 out of the 7 ambassadors surveyed said that they sent home letters to parents, and then 5 out of 7 also made daily or often phone calls home. One ambassador, I think, captured it well when they said positive reinforcement and making kids realize that their presence is a present to us is important. So over the past 2 years, we've learned a lot from working with the Attendance Ambassador Program. So 3 key takeaways include parents may not be aware of the importance of kindergarten or the relationship between attendance in the early grades and academic achievement. Consistent, individualized communication with parents is important in both identifying barriers to attendance and identifying resources needed. And incentives are important in recognizing both consistent attendance and improvements to attendance. So in the coming months, the Office of Research and Evaluation will conduct a quantitative analysis to examine the relationship between receiving supports and changes in attendance with these caseloads that I had mentioned earlier. Next, Abby will discuss the Attendance Ambassador Program, how it has informed the next steps for the Read by Fourth attendance incentives.
Thank you. So we mentioned earlier that one of our goals in this process was to learn strategies that we could apply more broadly. And with that, something that our working group has been hard at work on are school attendance toolkits that we are preparing to launch to all district elementary schools this August. And they will address some of the communications findings or the communications recommendations from the attendance ambassadors. So for example, we heard from the ambassadors how important it was to have a welcoming school environment with someone greeting kids and families and making them feel that they were important as they walk into the school. So we're going to create posters and talking points and things like that to make that really easy for schools to pick up and run with. We heard about the importance of phone calls, both when things are going great and you want to provide positive reinforcement, and some of the more difficult conversations to navigate when you're starting to get concerned because a child is missing school. So we're going to provide some scripts and talking points around that. And then we're also going to provide some resources around attendance barriers that we heard about. So there are many existing resources within the school district and within the city that families may not be aware of. And so we're going to create little cheat sheets with phone numbers to call and website resources to be aware of. And then we're also going to include some strategies that schools have found can work at a school-wide level. Giselle mentioned the corner store strategy of talking to the proprietor and making sure that he's sending kids along the way. Other schools where kids were struggling with having enough clean uniforms were able to pull together uniform swaps and things like that. So really just ready to use strategies and ideas. And when possible, we also want to provide printable or printed materials that they can immediately pick up and use. So a couple sample materials that we have here are the "We Missed You" letter home, providing a reminder to come to school every day, as well as a sample excuse note with a reminder about the strategy, the requirements of when that needs to get back in. And then you can also see one of the sample posters. And I forgot to mention, we're also going to prepare materials that schools can send home, such as welcome letters for back to school time, and perhaps even magnets or other reminders that can go on your fridge to help you keep track of your child's attendance at home. So we've been working really closely with the Office of Attendance and Truancy, but we also have an open invitation to all of you. If anyone here in this room has worked with the school that is doing something positive around attendance and has an idea that is working in their school, please let us know. There's 2 ways you can contact us. My email address is up there, or you can go to bit.ly/toolkitideas. Wherever possible, we're hoping that the toolkit can also acknowledge specific school leaders and parents and others who have contributed ideas, so that it's clear that this isn't just something that we pulled together, but really is drawing on best practice and lessons learned from throughout the school district.